First off, I really love this movie in the sense that it has three different tones to it because you get to really see the interior lives of three people. The tones are shifting, and it seemed like a very hard thing to do as a cinephile watching it. How were you able to pull that off to have three separate kind of interior stories in this movie?
Well, I had a great team. It starts with the words, it starts with the craft of the story and the desire to take genre and be playful with it. And everybody simultaneously signed up to deliver on that promise. And so they brought their toolbox to the party to figure out how can we make this feel of one story, but take people on a journey.
In the I guess the plot summary, its a description is a immersive thriller, but I really loved it how it's really at its heart a real drama and exploration of the human condition. Is that what attracted you to the material? Pretty much the fact that it is genre bending, but it's really exploring human nature in some.
Absolutely. I think, my life tends to go through about 17 genres a day. So I think we can kind of give permission for other people's to do the same. I really loved how determined Scott was to create these characters who had some dignity. They really needed to be investigated. And once we demonize people because of their behavior, we miss the opportunity to look at what is the genesis of that behavior. How perhaps was that person maybe failed earlier in their life, and how can we prevent that from happening again? So these are deep ideas, and they are rich, character, elements. So that becomes a wonderful playground to dive in with talented people.
I also like the idea, without giving too much away, that we as people, we try to satiate our own selfish needs, not realizing there is a repercussion involved. Was that another kind of layer that you really wanted to explore that can be generational? It's something about try to think about other people as well before moving upon your own selfish interests.
Absolutely. We have had a lot of conversations about generational trauma, right? And I feel like if we are able to go back and oxygenate some of those moments and figure out what that was really about and investigate our own impulses. The sort of horror story of this film is the idea that something that you've done in your past that you haven't taken responsibility for can fall out on the shoulders of your children. And once you become a parent, you would do anything to stand in front of that bus, So I think it's important to look at. It's important to understand that our actions, however small, are big, have consequences. And when if we take collective responsibility, then perhaps we would have less pain.
You checked off a couple of my boxes as a cinephile. First of all, I think, can you speak to the fact that Gallner is such a very talented actor? I've seen him in several films within the last year, and he's just really different in each and every one of them. Then one of these things is I just want more summer Phoenix movies. I've wanted that for years upon years. Can you just talk about checking those two boxes off and why were
Yes,
they so perfect? Yeah.
Summer was the first brave soul who jumped in and decided to do this with me. And we have some shared lived experience. She, spent a lot of time dealing with her own children and digging into her family, and so did I. I knew that she understood Beth's strength and she needed to protect her daughter. And she also understands what it is to have had a past, and to not be a perfect human being. I am not a perfect human being. I'm not a perfect parent. I'm not a perfect woman. Instead of making a decision that we need to look away from that, perhaps we link arms in our collective human experience. So, and in Kyle, he is an incredibly humble human, and he's a nuanced and deep thinker. He understands the role of masculinity and power. And he really was unafraid of looking at where this character had been calcified in the past. And when you can talk in those terms with an actor, then that's when you really get to be playful and you can push them beyond places that they've been pushed before as performers, which as a director is incredibly satisfying.
And my final question is, for my Finding Film podcast, I ask filmmakers and actors to name one of their all-time favorite movies or pick a movie that they feel is completely underrated and should be more out in the dialogue. So can you think of a movie from your head from that? And the second part of my question before you go is, recently I was thinking, man, I really want to see, honestly, more movies with Saffron Burrows as a lead. What will I get when I pull back from your resume with the guitar? So that two-part question, and thank you for your time.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, it's funny because the movie that I was just talking about yesterday was Singing in the Rain. And I love that film so much. And actually it's a film that's got a lot of singing and dancing, but when you look at some of the concepts and some of the sort of deconstruction of Hollywood, it probably applies to today. So I really appreciate all the talent that went into that movie. So that's on the brain for the moment. And Saffron Burrows is an absolute delight as a human being, and I'm absolutely determined to work with her again. She was that brave soul that jumped in with me on the guitar. And when I cast her in that movie, I was like, Saffron, what should I watch of yours that tells me you should do this film? And she said, nothing. That's why I want to do the film. And I knew, that we were going to be fast friends and that I was in really good hands.
And before you're leaving, we're both Gen Xers and went back to the 90s with stuff like Sundance and indie film. Indie films were very important to us as cinephiles. Do you think this new generation, indie films, indie cinema is still as important? Or is that this the words of an old man? It's always going to be important indie cinema?
Not only is it important, but I think it's critical. I think it's really, we have IFC to thank for getting behind filmmakers and ideas that are not necessarily commercially available in other places. And so I think as people are, becoming more tethered to their devices, it's important that we have expansive storytelling. And now we are looking at what is the model of us creating things. We do need to make sure that we have a diversified experience. So independence is really the ticket to be able to have a diversified landscape. And the Sundance Institute has been getting behind that for many decades now. And I was lucky enough to have that sort of as my creative birthplace in many ways. So these going to movie theaters, seeing movies in a movie theater, going to a movie like mine makes a big difference because it is a proven concept that these stories need to be out there.
Amy, thank you so much for your time. Really loved your film.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.